If you're hearing this, you're probably already in deeper than you realize. Don't worry, I've been there too. Let me take you back to where it all started. That's the only way you'll understand, and maybe, just maybe, you'll believe me. It began with what I thought was just another dead-end job, night security at a shopping mall. Glamorous, I know. You'd assume the graveyard shift was the worst, right? Wandering dark corridors after hours, chasing shadows, waiting for some high schoolers to sneak in and play ghost hunters. But no, the real nightmare wasn't the quiet. It was the noise. Day shifts were chaos. Kids screaming, influencers filming in the middle of walkways, parents ignoring spilled sodas and half-eaten pretzels littering the floor. I often felt more like a glorified cleaner than any kind of authority figure. Maybe I was. So yeah, I volunteered for nights whenever I could. The silence of those empty corridors, it had a strange kind of peace. Once the fear wore off, it was almost comforting. I'd walk my rounds with a podcast in my ears and the echo of my own footsteps as company. Most nights, nothing happened. Just me, the closed storefronts, and my flashlight. The worst thing I ever dealt with was a bunch of teens who tried to camp out overnight. They picked the play area in the food court, hiding inside the little plastic tunnel slide like I wouldn't hear them giggling from halfway across the mall. I gave them a good scare. Not as bad as the one they got from their parents after, though. Looking back, I kind of miss nights like that. But things changed because of one curiosity too many, because of the basement. See, night shifts can get real dull once the mystery fades. So I started to explore. At first, it was harmless, checking out vacant kiosks, poking around forgotten supply closets, that kind of thing. I never stole anything, even though it would have been laughably easy. After a while, I'd seen it all. Same corridors, same abandoned booths. I started trying locked doors. Most were maintenance closets, old break rooms, dusty employee restrooms, until one night, I found a door I'd never seen before. It was tucked away between a shuttered Forever 21 and an empty, gutted retail space. A hallway I usually passed without a second glance. But that night, bored out of my skull, I wandered down there, behind a row of dusty mannequins. There it was, heavy steel, painted a sickly yellow. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. I pulled out my ring of keys, the master set. Most of them I'd never even used before. One finally clicked. I expected a janitor's closet, maybe some leftover racks and store signs. But behind that door was a staircase. Cold, gray concrete steps disappeared into pitch black. No light fixtures, no signs. Just a staircase that spiraled down way deeper than it had any right to. Now, I knew the mall had a sublevel. Maintenance tunnels, access to plumbing, that kind of thing. But this didn't feel right. It was far too deep, and no one had mentioned it before. It was like it had been erased from memory. I hesitated. My flashlight barely pierced the dark. Something about that stairwell made me uneasy, and I still had a shift to finish. The mannequins loomed behind me as I closed and locked the door again. For a second, I could have sworn they looked different. But maybe I was just spooked. I finished my rounds that night, but my mind kept drifting back to that door. When I got home, I couldn't sleep. My apartment was small and plain, but it was mine, and usually it was my safe space. That night, though, I kept thinking about those stairs. That heavy silence. That void. I had to go back. I had to know what was down there. So the next night, I rushed my rounds and made straight for the door. The hallway looked the same. The mannequins still stood there like sentries. I unlocked it, wedged the door open using one of the plastic figures. I wasn't about to get stuck down there, and stepped onto the top step. The descent felt endless. My flashlight was strong, but no matter how far I pointed it, the bottom never came into view. The air grew stale as I moved downward. No handrails, just bare concrete walls and a slow leftward curve. I counted the steps. 50, 100, 200. That's multiple stories. My legs ached. My breath grew short. The door above vanished from sight. Still, I kept going. It wasn't smart. I knew that. It was dangerous, stupid even. But I couldn't stop. I had to know. After what felt like 45 minutes, I finally reached a landing. It was identical to the rest, dull, lifeless concrete. Except for one thing. On the left side of the wall, elevator doors. Sleek, silver, completely out of place in such a forgotten place. There was only one button, and beneath it a keyhole. I pressed the button. It glowed. A chime echoed softly. The elevator was already on this floor. But nothing happened. Then I noticed the keyhole. I pulled out the same key from before, inserted it, and the doors slid open. To my surprise, the elevator was lit. Elegantly, in fact. Polished interior, like one you'd find in a fancy hotel from the 80s. No dust, no cobwebs. Everything was immaculate. I stepped inside and looked at the panel. Just one button down. The arrow pointing up did nothing. I turned the key, pressed the up button again. Still nothing. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't the bottom. This was the top. I bolted up the stairs like a man possessed, fear gripping me tighter than logic ever could. Further down, that elevator was only going deeper. My mind scrambled for a rational explanation, something to anchor my thoughts. An old nuclear shelter, maybe, that could explain the infinite stairwell. Yeah, that must be it. But my body didn't care for theories. Each step burned. My legs were already wrecked from the earlier descent. And now the panic-fueled sprint left me gasping and doubled over with a side cramp that felt like a knife twisting into my ribs. Still, I climbed. The light from the top, that little square of salvation, kept me moving. When I finally reached the top, I nearly collapsed in front of that plastic mannequin, still faithfully propping the door open like a sentinel. I straightened it, gave it a tired nod, as if it could understand, and locked the door behind me. I told myself I was done. Whatever was hiding in the depths of that stairwell wasn't worth it. Not the curiosity, not the risk, not even the thrill. I was lucky the elevator hadn't turned into a steel coffin when I stepped inside. Something about that place whispered danger, and I listened. I went home, trying to convince myself I'd seen enough. Of course, if I had truly let it go, I wouldn't be telling this story. For a while, I managed to stay away. I stuck to my usual patrols, avoided the hallway altogether, and even started picking up more day shifts. Nights had begun to feel wrong, as though the silence had grown teeth. I needed to distance myself from it, from temptation, from whatever itch it had planted in my mind. Eventually, I lined up a new job, another security gig, different location. I don't even remember the details now. Just that it was enough to pull me out of that mall within a few weeks. Just a little longer, and I'd never see that place again. But there was still one last thing I had to do. I prepared like I was going on some expedition into the unknown. Spare batteries, 2 flashlights, portable charger, first aid kit, food and water. I knew my phone wouldn't work that deep underground. There was no chance a signal would reach. I wanted to be ready for anything. Yes, I knew it was reckless, suicidal, maybe, but even back then, some part of me understood that I wasn't going down there just for answers. I was going because I had to, and I'm sorry. I truly am. I wish I had let it go. Back I went, through the mall, to the hallway with its forgotten mannequins. The door opened easily now, like it was waiting for me. I descended again, the weight of the unknown no longer a deterrent. I knew where the stairs ended now. The elevator was there, polished and still, like an artifact out of time. I stepped in, turned the key, and hesitated. A sickness swelled in my stomach, cold, hollow, primal. But I ignored it. Maybe I thought it was nerves. Maybe I just didn't care anymore. I pressed the button. The elevator groaned and trembled as it began to move. For a moment, it felt like it would fall apart right there. But then the ride steadied. Smooth, silent. I expected fear, but instead, a strange kind of wonder took over. The feeling of crossing into forgotten territory. I thought maybe I had a knack for this, a hidden explorer streak. But then the minutes dragged on. 10, 15. There were no indicators, no floor numbers, no lights to tell me I was even moving. At first I thought maybe I had just adjusted to the motion. But then came the doubt. Had the elevator stopped? Was I suspended in the earth? Forgotten? I scanned the walls. No emergency button, no phone, no way to call for help. Just an arrow up and an arrow down. 30 minutes later, I gave in. I pressed the up button. Nothing. Pressed again. Harder. Still nothing. Panic began to crawl up my spine. I mashed both buttons, fists pounding, heart racing. No response. Trapped in a steel box, sinking into the depths of the planet. Eventually I just sat down, curled up with my gear, and waited. 2 more hours passed. My body stayed still, but my thoughts raced. How far down was this place? Miles? Who built this? Who needed it? My mind tried to calculate the weight of the earth above me. It wasn't helping. Then I heard it. A low, heavy sound, like someone plucking the strings of a giant metal instrument. Dull, echoing. The elevator jolted violently. My stomach flipped, and then the world turned upside down. We were falling. The ceiling rushed toward me. I floated for a split second before smashing into the roof, my backpack tumbling beside me. Time shattered into fragments. My body slammed around like a rag doll, weightless and helpless. Then impact. It was violent, final. A sound like steel screaming. Then nothing. I woke up later, head pounding, limbs aching like I'd been run over. The elevator light was dead, replaced by complete blackness. I fumbled for my flashlight, heart thudding like a drum. When I turned it on, everything looked intact. No bones sticking out, no pool of blood, just pain. Somehow I had survived. But I knew whatever was down here, I had officially crossed the line. This was no longer an adventure. This was something else entirely. I tilted my head upward, trying to make sense of the elevator cabin around me. The crash had jostled the doors loose. Barely, but just enough to let a sliver of light in. I jabbed at the buttons out of habit, but of course, nothing worked. Dead. Typical. So I got on my hands and knees and began forcing the doors apart. Took longer than I'd like to admit. My fingers ached and my shoulders screamed, but eventually the gap was wide enough to squeeze through. I pulled myself out onto the cold floor and stood up, shaking off the stiffness. What I saw made me stop breathing for a second. It was a mall, not the same one I'd been guarding for months, but close, familiar, just underground. Deep beneath the earth, beyond where any structure should logically exist, was a fully built shopping mall. Neon signs buzzed softly overhead, and some of the lights flickered on above me, casting that hazy half-glow that feels more like a memory than real illumination. I didn't need my flashlight anymore. The space stretched far ahead of me. Wide walkways, shuttered storefronts, scattered kiosks. I moved forward slowly, absorbing the strangeness. There were toy stores, candy shops, and plenty of empty lots. Just like any regular, dying suburban mall. But why was it here? Who would build something like this so far below the surface? Then again, it was a mall, which meant there had to be phones. Maybe entrances. Maybe people. Something. My phone was cracked from the fall, but I checked it anyway, no signal as expected. So I started walking, retracing the familiar rhythm of my old night shifts, hoping it would somehow bring me answers. I wandered for what felt like hours. No windows, no exits, just endless shops. Some zones had working lights. Others were drowned in darkness. I'd use my flashlight in those places, moving quietly, listening to the echoes of my own footsteps. I even tried opening a few store doors, expecting to have to break a window to get in. But my keys worked. Not just some of them, all of them. Each one matched a lock perfectly. That shouldn't have been possible. These were modern, unique locks, yet my ring held a key for every door. I tried not to think about it. There were no phones, no back offices with emergency lines. Finally, I gave up and started looking for a place to rest. Near what looked like a food court beside a Dick's Sporting Goods, I caught a faint whiff food. Sure enough, I found fully stocked food stalls, hot trays still full. I didn't question it too hard. Hunger trumped logic. I grabbed some lo mein and orange chicken from a Panda Express knockoff. Lukewarm, but edible. I didn't trust it, but I needed the calories. After eating, I scouted a nearby clothing store for something soft. Found a blanket shaped like a tortilla at a Spencer's and dragged it back to the food court. I pulled a few tables together, turned some chairs into makeshift walls, and made myself a bed. Not ideal, but better than the cold floor. Exhaustion finally took over, and I passed out. When I woke up, everything looked the same. The lights were still patchy, the shadows still long. I had no clue how long I'd slept. My phone read 3 p.m., but in this place, time didn't seem to mean anything. I sat there for a while, gathering my thoughts. Then I heard it. Faint slap, bare feet on tile. Soft and fast, then gone. I froze. "Hello!" I called out, voice echoing too loud. 2 more steps. Closer. Something rounded the corner. It moved slowly, like it was just as afraid as I was. At first I thought it was a person, sick maybe, but as it emerged fully, I knew better. It was humanoid, but wrong. Skin stretched paper-thin over bones, gray and sickly. Long white strands of hair, hollow black eyes, no teeth. Its mouth hung open in a twisted, painful grimace. It raised its arms toward me and let out a low wheeze that rose into a screech. A sound so raw and broken it felt like it had clawed its way out of its throat. Then it lunged. I didn't wait. I ran. I had my bag and my flashlight. That's all that mattered. Behind me, the shrieks echoed, but it was slow. I lost it easily enough, but now I had no idea where I was. The corridors all looked the same. I'd taken stairs, escalators, maybe even circled back. Eventually, I found myself in a pitch-black hallway and slowed down to catch my breath. I clicked on the flashlight and crept forward. It felt eerily familiar, like I was back doing rounds at my old job. That's when the thought hit me, security office. There had to be one. In a mall this size, there would need to be multiple. Places with radios, monitors, maybe even emergency access points. I didn't know where to find them, but I trusted my instincts. This place mirrored a real mall closely enough. If I could feel my way through it, maybe I'd stumble across one. So that became my mission. I stopped calling out. Too risky. Instead, I slept in darkened stores and ate whatever I could find. The mall was always stocked. Food, water, batteries, everything. Enough to survive. Too much even. Like someone or something wanted me to stay. I stuck to the lit areas, but I followed my hunches. After 2 days of wandering like this, something finally changed. I was foraging in another food court when I saw it. Trash. Not just debris. Fresh garbage. A food wrapper, greasy and crumpled, discarded beside a freezer. Someone had been here. Recently. The isolation had been eating at me. The idea that someone else was nearby sparked a flicker of hope I hadn't felt in days. I moved cautiously, watching every corner. If that thing had friends, I didn't want to meet them. But if another person had survived down here, maybe they could help me get out. I scoured the nearby area, trusting my gut again. And then I found it. Tucked beside a restroom hallway, a small security office. The door was open. Inside, I found a cluttered desk buried in papers. A microphone for announcements. Blankets piled high on a chair. String lights wrapped around the ceiling. Someone had turned this place into a home. Clothes, supplies, everything you'd need to settle in. Someone had been living here, and if I was lucky, they still were. I moved deeper into the office, scanning every inch in search of a phone. Any kind of contact with the outside world. No luck. But what caught my breath was the wall of glowing monitors. Security feeds, still active. Grainy but functioning. None showed exits. No streets, no stairwells leading back up. Just more of the same mall. Storefronts, halls, flickering lights, dead zones. Still, it was something. A map. A way to see the bigger picture. Then the door creaked open. A man stepped in, brown hair, glasses, and my exact face. I froze. He froze. We looked at each other like warped reflections meeting for the first time. It wasn't just similarity. This man was me. He raised a finger to his lips. Stay quiet, his eyes begged. His hand moved downward in a gentle, silent command. Don't make a sound. He looked thinner than me, frail almost. The skin hung off him in a way that spoke of years down here. I took a hesitant step forward, stunned, trying to understand. That's when panic flickered in his eyes. He waved his hands, trying to stop me, but I was already off balance. I stumbled forward and braced against the desk. My hand landed on the intercom button. A high-pitched feedback shriek cut through the silence, echoing through unseen speakers. The other me gave me a look I'll never forget. Pity, sorrow, and exhaustion. All in one glance. Then he ran, left everything behind. Just turned and sprinted into the mall's shadows like it was instinct. I should have done the same, but I didn't. I pulled my hand off the mic, silencing the shriek, but the damage was done. A sound answered, not like the creature from before. This was louder, deeper, a roar that seemed to shake the floor beneath me. I didn't wait. I grabbed my bag and ran. The pounding steps followed me. Monstrous, heavy, growing closer. I weaved through halls and turned corners, praying to break its line of sight. The only path ahead was one of darkness. I yanked out my flashlight, kept running. Then I gambled. If I couldn't outrun it, maybe I could hide. I lunged toward the nearest storefront. Locked. Panic surged. I dropped my flashlight in the scramble, hands shaking as I fumbled through my keyring. One key fit. I yanked the door open, slammed it behind me, and ducked out of view. From behind a rack of dusty stuffed animals, I peeked out. My flashlight, abandoned outside the door, cast just enough of a beam to illuminate the hallway. The beast's steps slowed, dragging now, heavy and ragged. I could hear it breathing, wet, guttural. Then I saw it. Enormous, hulking. The skin was gray, pulled tight over grotesque muscles. Its arms were as thick as tree trunks, ending in massive claws. Its head looked like a human skull, but stretched, cracked, and eyeless. There was no jaw, just a gaping maw running into its exposed chest cavity, which was wide open, bones cracked outward like shattered ribs. Bits of organs, or what remained, hung in tatters. It didn't even look alive, and yet somehow it was. It sniffed near my flashlight, then turned toward the storefront. It knew. Huge claws slid under the shutter. I slipped deeper into the store, heart hammering. The metal screeched as it was pried open. I had seconds. I stepped in. The shelves rattled under its weight. I crept, inch by inch, circling around the display aisle as the thing rounded from the other side. When it was just out of sight, I bolted toward the gap under the lifted shutter. It saw me, a guttural snort, then a blur of gray. It slammed me into the wall, hard. My bones rattled. The tile cracked behind me. It hoisted me up like a doll and drove its claws into my stomach. The pain was unimaginable, a sharp, splitting agony that made the world fade into white noise. I screamed as it flung me to the ground. Darkness swallowed me whole. When I came to, I knew I should have been dead. The pain was unbearable. My vision was blurred, and I could barely breathe. The air was heavy, sour with blood, rot, and something old. I reached for my stomach with trembling fingers and felt the deep tear. It was still bleeding. A lot. My left arm wouldn't move. It hung useless at my side, shattered. I clawed through my bag with one good hand until I found a flashlight. The click of the button echoed in the silence. The beam revealed something worse than death. A long hallway, cold, gray concrete like before, but lining the walls and floor were bodies. Dozens, hundreds, all of them strangely familiar. Their faces looked like mine. They weren't dead. They watched me, their faces sunken, hair long and tangled, eyes glazed but aware. Their skin was melting into the floor and walls, fused with the concrete like they were being absorbed. Their mouths hung open, twitching, whispering. They mumbled as I stepped over them. I couldn't tell what they were saying, but they made no move to stop me. At the far end of the hallway was a door, open just enough to reveal a pale hand, plastic and lifeless, wedged under it. I pushed the door open. It was a mannequin. The mannequin, the one I had used to hold open that first basement door. Somehow, it had made its way here, past the horror, past the blood, beyond reason. Through that door, I found the old store again. The one above, back in the original mall. The lights were off. Everything looked abandoned, like it had never been touched. I turned to look behind me, and saw that same pale yellow door, closed but intact. I had made it out. Somehow I'd escaped. The weeks that followed were a blur. I couldn't speak. I could barely move, but I healed. Slowly, painfully, I learned to avoid the smaller creatures that stalked the corridors. I stayed hidden, kept moving, found food, found water, but no matter how far I walked, the mall just kept going. I don't think it ever ends. Eventually, I found another security office. Inside, I found this note, or maybe a version of it, describing everything I had just lived through, word for word, as if someone else had written my story before I lived it. I've been here a long time now, years, decades. My body barely ages, but my face has changed. My eyes have dulled. I tried to end things more than once, but death won't come. It never sticks. I've met others, other me's, some barely functional, others totally gone. It's not just the mall that repeats. It's us, that screaming, hollow creature, the flesh melting into walls, the duplicates wandering endlessly. I think they're us. This place twists us until we become them, until we forget, until we rot, and then we begin again. I used to hope this note would help someone, maybe give them a warning, path out. But now I'm not so sure. I hope this version is a little different than the one I read. Even a word, a sentence, a pause. If something can change, maybe everything can. But I'm tired. That yellow door calls to me again. Maybe that creature wasn't guarding it. Maybe it was protecting it, keeping it closed, silent, a mimicry of peace. Maybe I'll go back, wait out eternity in its shadow. Maybe I'll become something else. Maybe you won't. But if you do, see you soon, partner.